I just want to start and ask because I love all of your films, and I want to. I know this seems like a crazy question, but how do you make them? In the sense that there's just something about your films in the way they feel, in the way they're shot, in the way they're made, in the way you get the performances, and it's sort of like I can't find films that feel like that.
Thanks.
And I guess I'm asking in a sense of where does it come from? Where in you do you find that and have this desire to tell these kind of stories?
It's funny, you know, as designed as all this feels, when I really have been sitting and analyzing it through all this press,
Yeah.
it's like, you know, I can't remember having another choice. You know, I've wanted to make movies for so long, even when I didn't know what that meant,
Right.
you know, or how to do it. I'd never been on a film set, but until I went to film school. But even coming out of film school, I just was kind of driven. It's like I didn't have any other options. This was all I was going to do. And so, by default, everything in my life became about making films, you know?
Was there like a defining moment for you that, or like a film you saw where you said, you know, I need to?
I don't know. I grew up watching movies, you know, like multiplex movies. We didn't have a lot of access to independent film, or I had, you know, it was whatever was on, I would watch multiple times.
Right.
And it wasn't until college that I really started looking into independent film and foreign films. I saw Badlands in college for the first time, and I definitely remember I went home and called my older brother, just said, "You got to see this film. There's this guy, and at the end, he's got this comb, and they're National Guard soldiers. He's giving his comb away. Like, I don't know. I've never been struck by a film that way. But I also remember, you know, my brother, the same brother, also brought Mystery Train home for us when we were in high school, and I remember thinking, I want to make a movie like that, you know, because I was familiar with Memphis because it was near Little Rock.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, I'd make a movie like that. That would be great, you know. I also remember when we first got Bravo on cable, back before they just showed like reality TV. They used to show foreign films, and I saw Akira Kurosawa's Dreams. I think it was on Bravo, which is so bizarre, but I swear that was the channel. And yeah, that was before I knew what I was doing or anything else. I just was struck by those films in a really pure way. You're just kind of like, okay, that's good, it's engaging, and it's unlike anything I've seen before. And so maybe, you know, those films, those were moments in my life, even though I wasn't aware. As a filmmaker, there were certainly kind of benchmark things that happened. Getting into film school was one. Getting into the director program in that film school was another. That happened 2 years in. I got to go to the Cannes Film Festival as an intern with Kodak at the American Pavilion, and like each one of those kind of broke down the barriers to the myth of being able to make a movie, you know, which sounded so silly and so far away. That there were these benchmark things that happened in my life. David Gordon Green making George Washington, and me being able to see a friend do that and have success and make something beautiful and big that felt like a real movie.
Right.
All those things kind of helped, I guess, define, you know, this determination. But as far as like those films feeling that way, I do analyze that, and I have been thinking a lot about that, and I think, you know, I've said it a lot, it's impossible to try and think about what audiences want to see and like how to please people. I don't, that's some studio guy's job. That's not my job. My job is how to affect people. And the only way I know how to do that is to not think about them, and to actually just think about myself. And if I can find an emotion that is palpable to me, that almost gives me a physical reaction, then I know that that's something worth making a movie about. You know, Shotgun Stories was about if one of my brothers was killed. I could close my eyes right now, and if that happened, it makes me physically nauseous. You know, Take Shelter was about the fear of my marriage unraveling, and me not being, you know, strong enough to keep my life on track, and that fear and that anxiety that the world was unraveling, and Mud is about heartbreak, and that first heartbreak, which is the most passionate heartbreak I think you'll ever have, because you haven't quite learned to protect yourself, you know, to put your hands up,
Right.
and so you just get socked in the face.
Right.
And and I remember when a girl broke up with me, it was a palpable feeling, and so like I say, anytime I stumble across one of those, because they aren't laying all over the place,
Right.
that's when I grab onto it and I say, this is what a movie needs to be.
Right. Right. I think that obviously shows in your films. That's why I wanted to ask about it. But I want to ask. I've heard this, and I'm not trying to get into your personal life, but I've heard that you aren't very into computers and like. I mean, how much? What is your lifestyle like?
It used to be, you know. Now I haven't had to be, but you know, I was helping edit Shocking Stories and Take Shelter. I had editors on those films, but I helped edit, and so I had to learn computers, and I had to learn Macintosh and Final Cut, and I got pretty good there for a little while, actually. I was kind of pretty good at figuring that out, but that was partly how I was making money. You know, I was working for an ad agency and shooting stuff, and but I'm not a tech head. I'm not great at that stuff. I've seen people who are truly talented at that, and I'm not that. Of course, that learning curve is still happening. You know, I've got to. I love shooting on film. I want to shoot on film for the rest of my life. But
is that possible?
Is it possible? And I've got to figure out how to take advantage of digital filmmaking. Right. And so, you know, I'm by no means like standoffish with technology or at all. You know, I write on a laptop every day. So.
I was just curious.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know where that came from. I mean,
I think I sort of heard it through this sort of
maybe because of the film thing, you know. And I've said that out loud, and I've read it online. A few people responding to me like, you know, screw that guy. Like he's, you know, how can he knock digital filmmaking? He's, you know, been so fortunate to shoot film, and I certainly don't mean it as a knock on digital filmmakers at all. It's just, you know, I struggled really hard to shoot my movies on film. I didn't have any money on those two films. Even Mud, you know, they show you that inevitably they come and show you. They're like, this is how much money we could save, and I just made it a priority. But now, like, especially with this next film, I need to. It's worth figuring out because I could take advantage of it possibly. It's all about lighting. Low light situations interest me. You know, like looking at what Fincher's done. You know, with those cameras, it's pretty darn interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I have to compliment what I've seen in your films anyway in terms of the shots. Just watching Mud earlier today, there are shots that are at every time of day where you can almost tell the time just based on the way it looks in the light. And normally it's either like sunrise, sunset, or in a studio somewhere. But I love that there's that like naturalistic feeling to your films, and I think that's one of the other things you really capture well is just what it's like to actually be there and not be fabricated in a Hollywood set sense, but just like the actual feeling of that.
You know, it's one of these early decisions that you make, kind of like shooting on film. You say, I'm going to shoot on location. You know, there's just no other way to do it, and the only set I've ever shot on in my entire life wasn't really much of a set. It was just a shipping container for Take Shelter, and we moved it from the guy's backyard to a warehouse and then shot inside of it. That was really the only set I've ever filmed in, and of course I made a requirement on that we just use the gas lantern to light it, which is why it has that look. But it's these decisions that you make early on, and you say like, this is how we're going to approach locations. This is how we're going to approach production design. This is how we're going to approach wardrobe, makeup. You know, and you try and make as naturalistic decisions as possible. And the sum total of that, hopefully, is honesty and realism out of what is a total fake situation. You know, movies are 100% fake, and we're just trying to make things appear to be reality, you know, as much as we can. And it's a tough job. It takes a lot of people to do that.
Well, compliments again. It
Thanks.
works. But speaking of genuine performances, obviously the two kids, incredible. We've seen them before, I believe, at least Ty and Tree Life.
Yeah.
And I'm sure this is a question I would ask you, but how do you get such amazingly real performances out of these two? Are they? Did you make them friends in real life, or did they become friends?
They
in real
became
life?
friends really fast.
Okay.
You know, again, it's early decisions. You say, okay, we're not gonna cast really kid actors. You
Right.
know, they exist, I think. And
Of course.
those aren't the ones we're going after.
Right.
We need to look for boys that are as close to these boys as possible
Right.
in terms of accent and behavior.
Right.
And we found that in both of them.
Hmm.
But then I lucked out, you know. I lucked out in that I not only found kids that were similar to the characters, but I found kids that were smart enough and sharp enough at the age of 14 and 15
Yeah.
to understand the script when they read it
Yeah.
and memorize the lines. And, you know, a lot of my lines are about subtext and behavior, you know, in between those lines. And these kids were so intuitive, they got it. I mean, Jacob Laughlin had never been on a film set before. He plays Neckbone, and he was just, you can watch that whole movie and just watch him. And it's great, because he's listening. He's looking from one character to the next character, and he's making faces, he's listening to what they're saying. And I mean, it's like he's in it, you know. And part of that was just, you get him in there and get him to work, and you make it as, you know, it's not a precious thing.
Right.
They get used to the camera guy and the boom guy and everybody else, and so they really are listening to what the other guy's saying, which is really the whole trick, I think.
Yeah. That was exactly the sort of what I wanted to get to with this question, is that when I was watching this morning, I thought there were so many scenes like you're talking about where the subtext, where I feel like he's understanding it, but at his age and at his experience level, I'm thinking, how can he understand it? But he's going through that process, and yet he is. That I see it in his face, I see it in his eyes, and
it's not just a cutaway to a cardboard stand-up.
Yeah.
You know, he's an extremely talented guy.
Does he actually understand that subtext, or is it a matter of getting you to understand at least what he needs to emote?
He does, you know. I mean, and this applies to the adult actors as well. But I spend so much time on writing these scripts. I really try my hardest to think about character behavior, and dialogue is character behavior, and screen direction is character behavior, and so I try and have all that worked out for them. It doesn't mean we have to use it or anything else, but they have a pretty good roadmap of where they've been and where they're going, and that's really my best trick. You know, I don't have tricks on set to cull a realistic performance out of actors. Right. It's just I give them a script, and which is the best tool I have to say, you know, this is clear. This is clear. And if it's confusing to you, either I've messed up or you're not paying attention. Right. And either is possible.
Right.
You know.
How much? I mean, you were sort of talking about this before, but from what you've established with the script and with the characters, how much evolves as the process is going? Because this is very much your film and very personal, your film. So, is there a lot of evolution on the set while you're shooting, and even in the editing process and progression from there?
Not so much, you know. Again, all three of my films, if you look at the scripts, that's what we shoot, and that's what it ends up being. Inevitably, you end up cutting out one or two things for length, because you want a little more breath here or there, and you have to sacrifice something later. And it's not even sacrifice. Sometimes you watch scenes and you realize they're redundant, or you just didn't need them. Right. I think I suffer from not always, you know, whittling down to the bone as much as I should. But you know, not so much. We stick to what's in the script, and the things you have to be open to are the I don't know, the environment, and literally, you know, especially on a river, and you have to work around that and be willing to adjust things in your mind. But if I change something in the script in terms of a line or a behavior, we think about it first. We really, you know, because when I wrote it, I wrote it for a reason, and so we have to understand why, if that's not working, why it's not working, and what works better, and I have to have that conversation. You know, I don't just kind of say, this is just a guide. you know. And I've been really fortunate to work with actors who respect that and who feel that from the beginning, you know, or else they wouldn't be there, because it's not like we're paying them a lot.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, the last sort of question I want to ask, similar to the evolution of the film, is how have you seen the evolution of your career progress?
You know, the fact that I even think of it as a career is crazy.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know? And that just kind of started after Cannes. I was like, oh, what do people want from Jeff Nichols?
Yeah.
Which is such an absurd question to me. I don't know. You know, I feel like over the course of these last 3 films, I've really been figuring things out. Figuring out light, figuring out movement, figuring out actors, figuring out editing, figuring out music, figuring it out. And now, after these 3 films, I do feel like I have kind of the necessary skills to kind of, I can kind of do whatever now. I've worked with a little bit of CGI, I've worked with a little bit of stunts, you know, so I'm kind of just, now I'm just kind of excited and ready, like, let's go do some stuff.
Well, then, the last part of that I want to ask is, are you considering Hollywood projects, or do you want to stay with the kind of project where you would write and direct and control every sort of aspect on it?
Well, at this point, I'm open to reading anything, and they send me things, and I read them, and I give them my time. But I've navigated miraculously somehow this business to the point where I actually have an opportunity to make my own stuff. And as long as I'm writing my own stuff and I have the idea and somebody out there is willing to fund it, I'm going to keep doing my own stuff. It's really hard for somebody else's script to compete. Doesn't mean it won't happen. And I'm certainly open to the universe and what it could send me. But right now, the only way I know to kind of guarantee a film that I'll be proud of is if I have control over it. And so I'm trying to maintain that. Yeah. But it's tricky.
Yeah, it is. I understand.
I'm trying.
You're doing well. 3 so far.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Can't wait to see the next one. Thank you.